In the 24th chapter of Matthew, the disciples of Jesus were startled by a statement that he made, and they asked a question that made a lot of sense based on what he had just said. Actually, they asked two questions. He went by the temple there in Jerusalem, and he said that a time was coming when there was going to be such a catastrophe that it would be torn down. Torn down to the point that not one stone would be left on top of the other. So they asked two questions because they were startled by the statement. The first one was, when shall this be? And the second was, what will be the signs of the coming of the age, or the end of the age? Now, we don't know necessarily if they were asking that as one question, like we understand that this is going to happen, and so tell us when it's going to happen because we also think that will be the end of the age, or if they really saw it as two different questions. The way he answered it, though, implies that he saw it as two different questions. First, I'm going to tell you how this is going to happen. When is the temple going to be destroyed? And he goes to the 24th chapter of Matthew, and he gives all these details about what's going to happen. Sometime, if you ever want to be in a real thinking mood, we can go through that chapter and talk about all that he said, but you'll have to have your thinking hat on because it's pretty complex. Then he starts giving examples about people needing to be ready when the end comes. Not necessarily now referring to the end of the temple, when it would be destroyed, which it was, by the way, but talking about when the end of the world is going to come. As he starts giving these stories, these parables, these illustrations about the end of the world, he comes to one that quite often you have heard talked about if you've been in church much at all. It's in the 25th chapter of Matthew. I think it begins in verse 14. It's referred to as the parable of the talents. Now, when we start talking about the parable of the talents, it typically throws us because the word talent in our language means something extremely different than it did back in that language. And when I say that language, I mean 1611, when the King James Version came into existence. That's where the word talent was first used. Obviously, it comes from the Koine Greek. What I mean by that is the New Testament was originally written in Koine Greek. And because the translators used the word talent, the talent referring to a certain measure, it was a word that at one time referred to how much something weighed. It eventually, over time, referred to how much particular coins were worth. And by our era, came to mean abilities and gifts and those kinds of things. As a matter of fact, one of the footnotes in the NIV Study Bible, when it talks about talents in Matthew 25, says that it's because of that parable that word came into existence for us to mean abilities and talents and gifts, because that's typically how we would teach that parable. That's how we explain it. It's how we preach about it. Now, there is a similar story Jesus taught over in the Gospel of Luke. Not going to go into that story in great detail. I'm saying similar because it was not the exact same story. It just had some similarities. In that particular story, let me just tell a little bit of it first. He had these 10 men. They were each given a mina. Actually, they were given 10 minas. The king was going away. He was going to come back. And to each of these 10 men, he gave 10 minas. Now, make sure you get all this down because the test comes in just a few minutes. Within the mina was what's called a drachma. A mina was worth 100 drachmas. You got that so far? A drachma was a typical day's wage. And so a mina was 100 of those. Now, let's just pick a number because it changes so much in every culture. But let's say a day's wage for the common worker in America today would be $100 a day. I don't even know if they were close to right. It's not what we get working in the nonprofit world. It's a lot more. But we'll just say it's a typical wage and $100 a day. If it's $100 a day and you had 100 of those, then you'd have $10,000. You understand? And so, these men then had a mina. A mina would be $10,000, but he gave them 10 minas, which means he gave each of these men $100,000 if we use that math. In other words, in the parable in Luke, each man was given a whole lot of money, the equivalent of 1,000 days of labor. Now, when you get over into the Gospel of Matthew, and we're going to start reading that in just a minute, beginning of verse 14 of chapter 25, he gives each one of them a talent. A talent is worth 60 minas. So if we're using just the numbers we used so far, and again, some of this is speculation because it doesn't say if it's a talent of silver or a talent of gold, but basically a talent, for the sake of our story, is $6 million. That's a lot of money, $6 million. And he gives one guy 10 of those. That's $60 million. He gives another guy 5 of those. That's 50. I just lost my math all of a sudden, right? If 6 of them are worth how much money? $6 million, then 5 is going to be worth 30. Oh, I lost the math already. Have you kept up with it so far? 60 million, 5 of them would be 50 million, one of them would, you followed the math that whatever the numbers, however messed them up, we'll play the tape later and go, that's where he went wrong, right there at that point. That's where he messed up the math. These are millions and millions of dollars. Understand he's talking about money. Now, it would be peculiar if you stop to think about it, why, when most of the people to whom he spoke would love to have a drachma. What they mean is give me 1 day's wage. I'd just be happy to have 1 day's wage. If almost all of his audience had that kind of income, why in the world is he talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars and millions of dollars to people who have no way to comprehend what that would be? Sometimes I think maybe it applies to the way my friend Dave Ramsey thinks. Dave thinks, or at least he said this on the radio, so I'm assuming that he thinks it. Dave thinks that when people all of a sudden come into a lot of money, and then they change personalities. Have you ever seen that happen? It becomes somebody different. It becomes somebody that you don't even recognize. Ramsey's view is, if somebody comes into a lot of money and changes, it's not the money that changed who they are, it's the money who revealed who they were. That this is who I really am on the inside, and now if I have the ability to be whoever I want to be and don't have to hide myself anymore, this is the real me. I don't know how I saw it. It must have been flipping channels or something. Over the Christmas holidays, they were talking about a young lady who is a singer, who is very popular, and her lyrics would not be consistent with my understanding of Christianity. Her attire would not be consistent with my understanding of Christianity. Her behavior certainly not consistent with my understanding of Christianity. Who, according to this little blurb I'm watching, first tried to make it as a singer, as a Christian singer, under a different name than she sings under now. She was a Christian artist who was out on the Christian circuit trying to make it as a Christian singer. When that failed, she pulled back in. Whoever was managing her helped her put together a different persona, a different way of coming at things. And now if I were to say her name, which I'm not going to for fear that, because it was over the Christmas holidays and I was taking pain pills for my knee, I may have heard the wrong name. I'd hate to say the name and you go, ah, and it turns out it was not her at all. So I'm not going to say the name, but this particular woman, I looked at that and went, if you really were a Christian, trying to make it in the Christian market, if that's really who you were, then how in the world can you be who you are today? How can you live as you live? How can you do as you do? Well, if we follow Ramsey's premise, we'd say, that's not who she really was. Who she was on the inside is revealed by the fact that now she has the means to be able to demonstrate it without enough judgment to stop her. And so, a lot of money in a hurry, it may not change who you are. It may just reveal who you always were on the inside that you were afraid to reveal. Certain success, instantly, young, whatever else, can it change a person? Maybe, but maybe it just reveals who they are. And maybe money just does the same thing. Now again, I've been on pain pills lately for the knee, so I may have misunderstood this, but didn't they say the other day that somebody won a $60 million over here in Bellevue somewhere? Is it you? Because if it is, we expect a tithe. I asked my next door neighbor, who was a pastor of a big Baptist church, I said, if one of your members won the lottery, would you accept the tithe? He said, absolutely. The devil's had that money long enough for God to have it. Now, whoever that person is that won that much money, and I don't know if that's the cash payout or the long term or whatever, I don't even know about all these things, but whatever he or she or they do next will probably be more of a revelation of who they've always really been on the inside that maybe has been hidden for whatever reason, whoever that person may be. Because money, in and of itself, is nothing but an opportunity. Now that's a $20 bill there. I think it's actually genuine. A $20 bill, that's not a heck of a lot of money, but it's all the money I had in my wallet, which for me means that's all the money I have at the moment, right? You see, what does it represent? Money in our culture represents an ability to trade. You see, if we were all living in some little village somewhere and it was just us, that was all of us, and some of us grew the cows, and some of us grew the pigs, and some of us grew the corn, and some grew the peas, and then somebody made the shoes, what we'd do is we would all swap out with each other. And I'd give you so many bushels of peas for maybe a slab of bacon and so forth and so on, and that's how we all did it. It just worked on trade. As cultures became more complicated, that became more difficult to do. And not only that, but then it wasn't just one person or one family making things, because it's not just one person or one family who makes the automobile that I drive. It's not just one person or one family that refines the oil, that puts the gasoline in my car so I can make it move. Society becomes much more complicated. So after a while, we don't have the ability just to trade everything, you see. And so the whole concept of money, as talked about in that parable and elsewhere, the whole concept of money had to do with, okay, how can we judge a person's contribution to our society, give them something that symbolizes that contribution, and then rather than trading the corn and the peas and the oil, we'll just trade this symbol so that we can get all the things we need to get. And that's how it all began. Though over a period of time it kind of got messed up. So that you can have, and please don't misunderstand, I like athletics. I like to watch athletics as much as the next person, where you pay millions and millions and millions of these to somebody who can throw or catch a ball or hit it, and then you put someone in a classroom influencing your child's life and you give them very little of these. Somewhere the system gets messed up, in my estimation. What do you think? You said, then why in the world do we give the millions and millions of dollars to the person who can, well, let's just get down to it. We pay a lot of money to people who can entertain us, because very few of us want to live in the real world. And so if they can make us laugh, or if by their song they can evoke certain emotions, or if they can get on a screen and transfer us into a world in which we don't normally live, or if they can hit that ball or throw that ball or catch that ball or whatever it might be, now they're transforming us from our own everyday, ordinary lives in which we don't want to live, and we give them tons of money to do that. Whereas the people who are in the ditches doing the hard work, the EMTs who show up to pull you out of the car and save your life, or again, the teacher who's doing everything he or she can to help your child understand the principles that will help them succeed as they get older, you understand the point I'm trying to make. And so we look at that and go, what does that represent? Well, it represents my life. You say, how much of your life did you give for that? Well, it's all I got in my pocket. That probably says a lot. A certain portion of my life I give for that so I can trade it to somebody else. Actually, I'll trade that for gasoline to get home, but I'll trade for somebody else to get what they do. And so it makes sense to me that Jesus talks about money a lot. As a matter of fact, the Bible talks about money a lot. So when he comes to this and he starts talking about money, maybe he's trying to reveal who the people really are by making it massive amounts of money. I mean, I don't know why he chose such massive amounts, but I think maybe that might be it. Or maybe another part of it is that people tend to be so envious of money. I wish I had that much money. Whatever it is, he uses massive amounts of money here to make a point. But his point is altogether about, will you be ready when it ends? Now he's talking about, in the big picture, the end of the world. But in actuality, if you get down to the practical part of that, he's talking about when it ends for you. I don't know that I will live till the end of the world. So the end of my world will be the day I draw my last breath, whenever that might be. Now, I'm not that old. I mean, 64 is pretty young. 65 next month. Be sure you've got all the presents ready. I'm just not that old. In my mind, I'm still 35 and 175 pounds. In my mind. Yet, knee surgery, which shouldn't have been real bad. I should be over it already, but because in my mind I'm 35 years old, I did way too much, and therefore it's taking a whole lot longer to heal. Oh, and Friday night, I take out my puppy. I got a puppy for Christmas. It's great. They forgot to potty train him. So Friday night, I take out my puppy, and I'm being real careful because of my bad knee. Step on in a piece of water I didn't see, slipped and bruised my right hip. So I've been hobbling around, and I'm lying there with Alice is asleep inside. She's the only one there, thinking, I could have hit my head. I could have died out here. Nobody would even know. The raccoons would eat me. It'd take them a while, but they would eat me. Thinking, as young as I feel and think, I could have died right there. Right there. It's just that far away. Just a slip. Just a slip. So the end can come anywhere, anytime. And of course, for me then, that's useless. Now, of course, Alice will need some to bury me. She's got to buy that jumbo-sized coffin. All kinds of, she's got to live for a while after that, so forth and so on. And so it's really precious stuff. But what makes it precious is it really represents life and what you have to give for it. And then people become so selfish with it. I want more, I want more, I want more. And so maybe that's the third possibility that Jesus chose such a massive amount of money. Maybe it's because it would be so much that these people wouldn't be going, I want more, I want more, I want more. Then again, maybe nobody ever gets to the point where they don't want more, want more, want more. Here's the parable. Again, means he's talking about the end of the world. Again, it will be like a man going on a journey who called his servants and entrusted his property to them. Next verse, please. To one he gave 5 talents of money, in other words, millions of dollars. To another 2 talents, to another 1 talent, and according to his ability, then he went on his journey. Now, you're right. 5 talents would be 30 million based on what we gave earlier, right? Okay, so 30 million, 10 million. And so he goes on, he gives all this money, tons of money. Now, the point, he's given them a lot of money, but the point is now that these guys have them, the man who received the 5 talents went at once and put his money to work. We say, how do you put money to work? Well, in our day and time, you can put it in the stock market. You can invest in other businesses, which is probably how he did it back then. You could loan it out only under their law, the Jewish law. If you loaned it, it had to be under fair rates. Usury was condemned. So maybe he loaned it to people. Maybe he invested in businesses. Whatever he did, he used the money wisely. He wasn't being selfish with it. He wasn't hoarding it. He wasn't hiding it. He actually used it. And by using it, he could literally help other people. By using it, even though he was looking to make money back from it, but by using it, he could actually help other people. A quick personal illustration, my younger brother, Greg, both of my brothers made money. I went into the nonprofit world. My younger brother, Greg, has on several occasions helped people start businesses where the whole idea is once you get it going, you just pay me back what you first got from me. No extra, no interest, no anything else. I'll just help you get your business going until such time as it functions well. And he's done that because he believes as a Christian, that's what he should do to help other Christians. He makes his money work. So the man who received 5 talents went at once and put his money to work and gained 5 more. So also the one with the 2 talents gained 2 more. But the man who had received the 1 talent went off, dug a hole in the ground, and hid his master's money. After a long time, the master of those servants returned and settled accounts with them. The man who'd received the 5 talents brought the other 5. Master, he said, you entrusted me with 5 talents. See, I've gained 5 more. I've doubled your money. Now, that's got to be pretty exciting. If you're talking about millions of dollars and it's been doubled over a period of time, somebody's going to be pretty happy. His master replied, well done, good and faithful servant. You've been faithful with a few things. I'll put you in charge of many things. Come and share your master's happiness. If you've shown that you can be trusted with millions and millions of dollars, I can trust you with an amazing amount of things, and that's what you're about to get now. You're going to get trusted with a whole lot more. The man with the 2 talents also came. Master, he said, you entrusted me with 2 talents. See, I have gained 2 more. Wow, you've done well with the millions of dollars I gave you. That means you're trustworthy and I can put you in a better position. His master replied, well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with a few things. I'll put you in charge of many things. Come and share your master's happiness. Good news so far. Then we come to the last guy. The man who had received the 1 talent came. Master, he said, I knew that you are a hard man, harvesting where you've not sown and gathering where you've not scattered seed. So I was afraid and went out and hid your talent in the ground. See, here's what belongs to you. His master replied, you wicked, lazy servant, so you knew that I harvest where I have not sown and gather where I have not scattered seed. Well, then you should have put my money on deposit with the bankers so that when I returned, I would have received it back with interest. Take the talent from him. and give it to the one who has the 10 talents. For everyone who has will be given more, and he will have an abundance. Whoever does not have, even what he has, will be taken from him. And throw that worthless servant outside into the darkness where there'll be weeping and gnashing of teeth. It's a pretty scary parable. I think one of the reasons we like to talk about it in terms of not being money, but being talent, like gifts and abilities and etc., it's because, in my opinion, somehow we can convince ourselves we're using our talents, abilities, and so forth, even when we're not. We can convince ourselves that we're actually using them when in actuality we're truly burying them. It's harder to see that with the money because the money is looking for some kind of response. If it's going to stay the same, or it's going to get larger, or it's going to get smaller, it's going to do one of the three. And I think maybe that's one of the reasons he chose money for the parable, because you just can't do that where you look at it and try to claim to yourself, I have used my talents, I have used my abilities, I've done it, but nothing good came from it. People could try to argue that, but they couldn't argue that with the money. So here's what he's saying. The time's coming when you're going to die. That's how we say it. The time's coming when there is an end. And at that point, you're going to be called into accountability for how you use what you had. He talks about money. But don't you think it applies across the board to everything else? And so here we are. People spend a lot of money that they don't have. Talked about this before a little bit. Let me repeat. You see, I get that for what I've already done. There are some people who want to live on what they've not done yet. And that's when they pull out the credit cards. And they'll say, I'm pledging my future. Go ahead and give me what I want now. I'll pledge to give to you part of my future so you get back the money, because I want what you have. And so we just hand out the credit cards, and we just go and go and go and go and go. And apparently there are a lot of us, since Target's saying 100 million people, 100 million people. There's only 300 million people in America, and 100 million shop at Target. 100 million people have their identities at risk because of the fact. And so when I go to lunch with Louis Falzetti, who is the EV, the executive vice president at Lampo, that's the Dave Ramsey Group, and if I buy lunch, typically he insists, sometimes I don't fumble the right way and I have to pay. And when it's my turn to pay, when I pull out my card, here's his first question: is it debit or credit? Because if it's credit, you will not pay for my lunch. Nope, it's debit. Comes right out of the account. I learned my lesson a long time ago with credit. Because when I can take things and promise my future life, and take things and promise my future life, and take things and promise my future life, one day I wake up and realize my future life's all gone. I pledged it all away. And it takes a long time to recover from that. So you see, money? This whole lesson's about money? It really is. It has other applications as well. And so what is his point? He says, it's my money. Whatever you have because of me. I've gifted some of you to be great singers, and that turned into a great career, and you make millions and millions of dollars. Who gave you that voice? I gave some of you the ability to pretend amazingly well. They called you an actor. You entertain people and make lots of money. I gave you that ability. I gave some of you the ability to have these amazing business minds that you can look at things and understand what will work and what won't work, how to build the organization, how to put it together, how to market, how to sell, all those kinds of things. You can take credit for all that on your own. Or you can thank the one who gave you all of that. And maybe the easiest and clearest way to see the representation of all of this is in the money. Not because it's holy. It's not. But because of what it represents. It represents how much of your life you're willing to give to get it. It realizes how much of your life you're willing to hang on to and be selfish with when you keep it. and it demonstrates whether you can live your life in faith. That if God gave me this, then by faith I need to do that, or to live my life in fear. Well, I know God gave it to me, but I'm terrified, and so I will do nothing. Nothing. And so when we talk about the opposite of faith, we often call the opposite of faith doubt. The opposite of faith, doubt's one way to do it, but the other way to look at the opposite of faith is the opposite of faith. Opposite of faith is fear. I'm afraid. So at the beginning of the year, I challenge us all when it comes to our money. Whatever we're doing with it, are we doing things that benefit the King? So that he looks down and says, the way you're using money has multiplied what I wanted to do here on the planet. Or the way you're using money shows that you live in fear, not faith. Not faith in me, not faith in what I will do, not faith in what I can make happen. Because you live in that, you will use your money to bless other people. Because I think that's how we invest it today. You say, so you're talking about putting more in the collection plate. If that's where you believe it helps people, absolutely. You say, but sometimes you might just give money to somebody, you run across somewhere, but you didn't have time to go put it to the church, but you just ran into somebody who's hungry and you fed them. Is that serving God? In my opinion, absolutely. It's what you do with what you've traded your life for. It's what you do with that. And that's what that parable's all about. And if you use it well, God will give you more. If you use it selfishly or fearfully, not only will God not give you more, but based on this particular story, he'll take yours and give it to somebody who will use it. He's not going to continue to bless us to do nothing. He'll bless us to do something in his name and for him. And so, it's a pretty scary parable. But a really exciting parable. Because the people who do it well, he doubles their blessings. Might be a great goal for 2014. God, double my blessings. And God goes, happy to. Do something with it. And I'll double it.
Shackled by a heavy burden,